What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube with another edition of The Drive-In, where I talk to you guys about recently released films, whether it's theaters or video on demand, and I tell you guys whether it's worth watching in theaters, waiting for it to come out a little later, or worth skipping altogether. I've got another 2019 release for you guys today. Before I get to that, please go back if you have not seen my review of 2019's Haunt that is currently on Shudder. Go back and check that out. I cut that video yesterday. I apologize for wearing the same shirt here 2 days in a row. But I just cut like 4 videos in the last 2 days, so I didn't feel the need to change shirts real quick. You will see a new shirt from me tomorrow. But yes, check out 2019's Haunt review yesterday. Got a lot of feedback on social media, but it needs more views, so go check it out. Today I am doing another one. So all October long, I watched a bunch of movies. I watched 34 movies in October. The most I ever watched in a single month. Half of those were brand new first-time watches for me. But I was too busy enjoying all the October festivities to really be posting in October, so I figured November would be a good time as we're all getting over we have the blues of a horror month being over, that I can post these horror reviews now on my channel and get out of just doing just football and get back to horror a little bit so you guys can kind of heal from missing October and getting into the holiday season. So today I've got on the Drive-In 2019's Netflix release, In the Tall Grass. This was much ballyhooed as well, heavily talked about, released on Netflix, I think October 3rd of last month, and it is based on the Stephen King and Joe Hill story. Stephen King and Joe Hill wrote a short story together called In the Tall Grass, and it was released for a Netflix adaptation. Netflix has been doing a lot of Stephen King stuff recently and doing it pretty well for the most part, so this was pretty well ballyhooed coming into this. And I want to talk to you guys at first spoiler-free about this in case you haven't seen it, and then I'll do spoilers at the end of the video. But this is written and directed by Vincenzo Natali, who is known for Cube, which we all love. It was Saw before it was Saw, and Splice, so he's done several horror films before. And starring Patrick Wilson and Leisha de Oliveira, and a pretty big cast overall. The idea behind this movie is a family pulls up, it's a brother and sister, and the sister's pregnant with her boyfriend's child, and they pull up as they're driving to try to get away for a fresh start to raise this child, and they pull up alongside these cornfields, and they hear children lost inside the cornfields, so they go in to try and rescue the children, and wind up getting caught in this crazy maze, which is like a fever dream. All kind of weird things occur inside these cornfields. So it is sort of a thriller mystery of how do you get out, what's going on, who's running the chaos, standard kind of Stephen King stuff. I love the premise of this movie. Right away, it's a positive on the premise. It reminded me a lot of Children of the Corn or another one of those random Stephen King backwoods movies. It had that Stephen King feel to it. It was highly cinematic. The sun was going down. The shots in particular were great. The cinematography of this thing is the strongest point for me. To take an idea like this where it's something small cast, very simple, children's lost in a cornfield, adults want to save them, they can't get out, they're in a maze, madness ensues, they slowly get weaker and crazier as time goes along. And to surround it with such an awesome cornfield, the cornfield was so tall and thick and authentic, and the shots through the cornfield up to the sun, or through the sun down to the cornfield, as the sun was setting, the lighting changed, was so creepy. The camera work, the lighting, and the scenery, the settings were done so well, the set deck and everything was done so well, that it was such an authentic, dirty, creepy feel that made you feel like you were part of this journey. You were stuck in the maze yourself. So I credit the lighting, the cinematography, and the set as being the biggest strong points of this film. So if you like things like that and you're looking for a cinematic Stephen King style feel, this one is for you. Where this thing started to kind of go south, well, first I'll say the acting is really good. Patrick Wilson has been doing a lot of horror with Insidious and Conjuring and stuff like that recently, and he's phenomenal. He kind of plays a bit of an possible antagonist in this movie. I won't get into spoilers, but he has kind of a dual-layered character in this movie, and his acting leads a pretty strong core of actors. I didn't get to write the child's name down, but the child in this movie was great. Pretty much everyone in this movie was very solid regardless of age, but Patrick Wilson stands out as being a really, really good standout character in this film. Now, once you get past all the aesthetics and all the setup and everything, that's where this starts to fall apart. It's a good premise and prose, but it doesn't follow through on the writing. We start time jumping a lot. We start seeing a lot of flashbacks where things happen just before the film starts, just after the film. You don't kind of know what's a dream, what's reality. You don't know which of the characters is good and bad at one point, which I guess can be considered a positive, but I consider it a negative. The story was all over the place. For something like this, I think a slow deterioration, having good versus bad, would have been a nice, fun watch for this movie. But this movie was like an hour and 41 minutes, and it seemed to drag because once we got the good setup, the middle just really took its time. Slow burning, but it was jumping back and forth so much that it lost its viewer. I lost interest because you don't know what's happening before, what's happening during, what's happening after. You see characters you think are dead come back to life. You see characters you think are alive that aren't shown being dead, and you really don't know what's going on. So they want to get you lost in this fever dream, but a lot of times fever dreams are not coherently written enough, and they're not linear enough to keep my attention. So the lack of linear storytelling and the frequent jumping kind of loses your audience here. It's one of the biggest negatives in this movie. And then there's kind of a cult element that gets revealed as we get toward the end and figure out kind of what the forces are behind this. One and a few of the other characters get involved in cult-like things where there's like a central point to this maze, but they don't really explain what the cult is, why it is what it is, or how it possesses people. So you see certain people kind of giving in to whatever this cult thing is, but they never set the story up. They never really quite tell you what it is. They kind of do, briefly, but they really spend like 30 seconds on it and just jump to the next thing. And so you really don't know what character's journey you're following, and you don't really know why this is happening. And combined with the fact that you don't have linear storytelling, really kind of loses you on this. So I want to get into spoilers, but first I'll give this a grade. I'm going to disappointingly give this a 5 out of 10. Very average for me. Again, the setup, the idea, the cinematography, everything was shot so nicely and looked so cool, and the acting was good, but if the story can't hold your attention and you really don't know why what's happening is happening, then to me it's not a great story. So in spite of the fact that Natali is a pretty solid director for horror, and this is based on a Stephen King and Joe Hill story, which are two of my favorite authors of all time, this really fell short for me. Really hot start, really kind of lackluster middle, and then the ending kind of comes out of nowhere as well. Now I'm going to get into spoilers, so if you guys haven't seen this, pause the video, go check it out, and come back. Spoiler review starting now. Basically, the brother and sister have a weird relationship where the sister's getting away from an abusive boyfriend, and she's trying to flee with her brother, and her brother has a little too much love for his sister. He kind of wants her romantically, or he's jealous of their relationship, so the boyfriend shows up out of nowhere, and the boyfriend was like kind of a bad guy, but he's trying to be a good guy, so he has a bit of a redemption story going on. But the brother, who was there to fill in for his sister, was once a good guy, is kind of turning into a bad guy because he's jealous of the boyfriend, and he wants the sister all for himself. So there's a lot of juxtaposition of the characters here where good turns bad, bad turns good. They come across when they're trying to rescue this child, they realize the depths of this cornfield makes your mind wander and makes you get lost very easily and see things. So there's a lot of illusions which sometimes are cool for scares and sometimes is just too much. But they come across this family fathered by Patrick Wilson, who seems to be a good guy and winds up kind of being evil. And you don't know, again, because there's visions of the wife and child, you don't know when they're alive and dead, you don't know what Patrick Wilson is doing, but obviously he has succumbed to this cult. He's stuck in this maze, and he is, like, I guess, feeding on souls to get himself and the cult stronger. He's representing this cult, and he's probably been dead for years, and he's just, like, feeding on people's fear and souls to get this cornfield stronger. At one point they do get out, and the brother actually lets the boyfriend die, so that's a weird character choice that I didn't really understand logic-wise. And then at the end, the child comes out in a flashback before it starts. I guess he stops the time loop. There's a big time loop going on where the child finds his way out of the maze and tells the main characters before they go into the maze not to go in. So what they're hearing is the child in the maze, but the child is also outside the maze, stopping them from going in, which stops the whole story in the first place. But somehow the boyfriend is still inside the maze dead. So the time loop is all messed up. So the main characters wind up being spared, but the child is still somehow in the maze, but the boyfriend who was in the maze after the main characters got in the maze is dead now because he wasn't stopped in time. So if this doesn't make any sense to you and I'm losing you, that's why I give this movie a 5 out of 10, because the storytelling doesn't make sense. If you're going to do a time jump, it's got to be an entire time jump for all the characters. You can't have some stuck in the loop, some before, some after. It's just very unlinear storytelling. And the ending of them being saved is fine, but then you still have the child in the maze, you still have the boyfriend being dead. So it loses its audience, it tries to get too cute and overcomplicate itself, it gets too lost in the fever dream, and it loses the really cool corn maze situation. You had characters with a good story, and you kind of diluted it with all this brother and boyfriend stuff and all the different time jumps. It dilutes what could have been a great premise and a great character story. So while it's still not bad, and while it's got its high points, especially Patrick Wilson, and especially the demented cornfield maze set, the story just doesn't hold my attention. So 5 out of 10. If you've seen it, what do you think? Am I being too hard on this thing? Should I give it another chance? Tell me in the comments below, and I'll be seeing you guys all month long with different Tales from the Forts and Drive-Ins of the movies that I watch in October, and I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow as well with a new shirt to tell you guys what I've been up to all October and get you guys into my horror writing and my horror directing and all the different horror stuff that I've been doing as an artist lately. I want to catch you guys up on that, so come back tomorrow and check that out, and I will see you guys real soon. Thank you. Stay scared.